Peace, family. Welcome to the Illuminated Eye, where we remember what was buried so we can reclaim what was lost. Today we travel back to Spain when Africa ruled Europe and the world called it the Age of Light. In 711 AD, led by the Amazigh general Tariq ibn Ziyad, an army crossed from North Africa into the Iberian Peninsula. They were called Moors, a name used for the Africans of mixed Berber and Arab lineage, black and brown people from the continent's northern coast. Dr. John G. Jackson reminds us that Europe was descending into feudal chaos while Africa was preserving science, art, and philosophy. When the Moors entered Spain, they didn't come as mere conquerors, they came as builders. They introduced irrigation, architecture, and education. Within a century, Cordoba shone like a second Mecca, with paved streets, streetlights, and libraries holding hundreds of thousands of books. Europe called them barbarians, but the truth was reversed. The so-called Dark Ages were lit by African genius. Jackson wrote that it was through the Moors that Europe relearned mathematics, astronomy, chemistry, and philosophy. They studied Hippocrates and Ibn Sina, translated Greek and African texts, and established universities where Christians, Jews, and Muslims studied side by side. This was the golden age of Al-Andalus, Africa's mind at work in Europe. For nearly 7 centuries, Moorish Spain stood as a model of tolerance and knowledge. Granada's Alhambra became a living poem in stone, geometry, and light. Music, medicine, and navigation flourished, and these ideas flowed northward, fueling what Europe would later call the Renaissance. But history is written by those who win the wars. When the Reconquista ended in 1492, the Moors were driven out, their books burned, their scientists exiled, their skin redescribed as Arab to remove its African origin. The same year, Columbus sailed west, and Europe's story of civilization was rewritten to begin with itself. Dr. Jackson said it plainly: the destruction of Moorish culture was the destruction of African achievement in Europe. What followed was a silencing, a careful amnesia that made Africa the shadow rather than the source of light. And that silencing did not stop in Spain. It echoed through centuries of colonial education and enslavement until our own children were taught to see Africa as the beginning of poverty instead of the birthplace of civilization. Here's where history meets the mind. Dr. Wade Nobles teaches that to control a people, you must first control their definition of reality. When our story was erased, so was our mirror. Without the image of our own greatness, many of us grew up with a fractured sense of self, a quiet grief we couldn't name. The loss of historical identity isn't just academic, it's psychological. It shows up as self-doubt, self-hatred, and disconnection from our roots. That's why remembering the Moors is not ego, it's therapy. To know that our ancestors built universities while Europe slept in darkness restores our sense of continuity, our ash, our power to be. When we study the Moors, we're not romanticizing the past, we're restoring our reflection. We're proving that Africa did not just survive history, Africa shaped it. I'm your host, Mustafa, and this is the Illuminated Eye. Stay aware, stay grounded, and keep your third eye open. Peace.